mic's on.
Okay, well, I'll do that too. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the World War Forum, September 2nd. Anybody know what happened on this day in 1945?
The Japanese formally surrendered.
Yeah, the Japanese went on the Missouri and surrendered. Terrific. Well, for us, we're getting back from Labor Day and we're starting our fall season. And my job is to do propaganda for the upcoming sessions, along with a few other things. So first of all, our next meeting will not be on a Tuesday. It will be on Wednesday, October 1st. Repeat, Wednesday, October 1st.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. as usual. Why is that, you ask? Because October is the Friends of Porter Public Library annual book sale, which includes books, DVDs, CDs, and a lot of other cool stuff. And this room will be in the process of being filled up with about 15,000 different items that will be on sale at wonderful prices. Okay? And I see a lot of probably grandparents out there. The children's room will be overflowing with things from books and toys and DVDs and puzzles. There'll be lots of puzzles here for kids and adults, by the way. So October 1st is our next meeting, and that is going to be Judge Ellen Conley and Professor Goldberg, and the subject is MacArthur, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Ellen suggests that if you want to be ready to watch the, she put it as the Gregory Peck movie from the 70s where he's MacArthur, okay? So that's going to be October 1st. In November, we go back to Tuesdays, and in honor of Veterans Day, the session will be on, and I hope I'm right, Dave, Finding Your Military Ancestor. With Dave Ressler, who is on the faculty at Lutheran West, an avid amateur genealogist. He does a lot of work for the 103rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry Group. He'll be here with one of his students, by the way, who won a National History Day contest regional, went to state, and if I can put in a plug, she also won a Civil War, Cleveland Civil War Round Table Award for Best Civil War exhibit in her category. So they'll be here in November, and then I know the date you're all waiting for. In December, we're going back to the South Pacific. And we're going to be looking at the naval and air battles around Guadalcanal. And a decision was made, too, that we're going to finish this in January. So we will give it the coverage it needs. And I'd like to remind everybody that the naval battles at Guadalcanal included 2 carrier battles, which involved almost as many ships and almost as many planes as were at Midway. These were big affairs. So that's what we're looking at least to the end of the year and into New Year's. Now, I also have to make another announcement. Besides having the opportunity to come in here in October and spend lots of money on stuff that helps support the Friends of the Library, you could also go to Houlihan's Restaurant on Thursday evening, September 18th, and buy a lot of food and drink, because 20% of everything you spend goes back to the Friends. And the Friends help provide extra programs for the library, like the one you're in tonight, okay? So, things to come. Do you want me to do that, or do you want to talk about it?
No, I can, no.
Oh, all right. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Chad.
All right.
Thanks for coming out.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. If you don't know me, my name's Chad Stotler. I'm the local history librarian here at the Westlake Porter Public Library. On your chairs, you should have found a program survey form. If at the end of the night you can fill it out, I greatly appreciate it. It helps us know how we're doing, and if you have any ideas for any programs you'd like to see, please write on there. If you don't have anything to write with, there are pencils on the back table. So if you could take a minute to fill that out, I greatly appreciate it. Tonight we have 2 gentlemen from the Liberty Aviation Museum out in Port Clinton, Ohio. And they'll be speaking about their PT boat that they have there that's been restored. First, we have Todd Hackbarth. He is originally from Northeast Illinois. After spending 30 plus years in the metropolitan Detroit area, Todd and his wife Lisa now live in Cuyahoga Falls. Retired from the information technology field, Todd is a volunteer for Liberty Aviation Museum, which is located at the Erie Ottawa International Airport near Port Clinton. Although not a pilot or aircraft mechanic, he has been actively involved in the restoration and operation of former military aircraft warbirds for more than 40 years. Todd's interest in history has led him to document the past lives of many of the Liberty Aviation Museum's artifacts, including the 2 motor torpedo boats that he'll talk about tonight, and his partner in crime is Bob Fujita, who will introduce himself.
I don't have nearly the pedigree that Todd does. My name is Bob Fujita. I grew up in a little place called Westlake, Ohio. Somewhere here at Porter Public Library is a fine from when I was about 4 years old. My mother got into an argument with the librarian. I don't think I was allowed to come here until high school. So I might be wanted here. Maybe they'll let me out tonight, maybe they won't. In any case, about 8 years ago, I joined another friend of mine who's the CEO of the Liberty Aviation Museum, also a Westlake native. And we went through Cub Scouts and then high school and college all together. I did a lot of other things for a career, and eventually, when I was looking towards the end of my working career, Ed Patrick, our museum CEO, called me up and said, "Are you ready to come work for us? We need you." So I've been there about 8 years now and had a great time there. Almost everything I learned about aircraft and aviation and even PT boats, I learned on the job, and certainly one of my mentors, Todd Hackbarth. Nobody researches like Todd, so we're very, very fortunate to have him. So I'm going to let Todd run his program. I'm sort of an extra here, but we leave this all to Todd. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We'll call you I'm going to try, boy, I've got a bad voice tonight. I'm going to try and move with this because we could be here all night. Nobody wants that. But this is our logo. The Liberty Aviation Museum is a non-profit museum. It is located at the Erie, Ottawa International Airport. Erie County and Ottawa County split the ownership, split the cost of the airport. If you work for the airport, you cut the lawn or you fill planes with gas, every month you get 2 paychecks. Half for one county and half. You can see the islands. You can see the islands, Put-in-Bay and stuff back here. So that's really how close they are to the mainland. This is about 2012 when they first put the museum up, and it is huge, and it's only gotten bigger. You can see we can park buses, and you can taxi your airplane up to the back ramp, come in, eat, and then leave when you want. This is the front. We have a restaurant, a diner that we call the Tin Goose Diner. The Ford Trimotor was nicknamed the Tin Goose, therefore we have the Tin Goose Diner. Back up just a little bit, and before the 20s, there have been people living on the main islands, the main Erie Islands, forever. They used to grow a lot of grapes for wine there. And in the winter time, they basically have to have a metal skinned boat, and where they had open water, they'd get in the boat and go, and when it was ice, they'd drag it. So in the 30s, they started an airline, and it's been nicknamed the world's shortest airline. They would start, actually the headquarters was at South Bass, at Put-in-Bay, and they would go to the mainland, Port Clinton. They would go up to Rattlesnake, which is a very small island, and the runway bisects the island. North Bass, which is just below the Canadian border, Middle Bass, and Kelly's. For years, the tri-motor was the bus, school bus, was the ambulance, it was mail, it provided anything and everything, especially in the wintertime. So the tri-motor is a big part of Port Clinton. It really is. 5 minutes to Put in Bay, that's maybe a little optimistic. They ended up, over the years, they operated on them just about 40 years, and they ended up with a total of 6. And I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's the interior, and people are just sitting on whatever they found to sit on. Here's the pickup wagon.
The airport limo?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, kids caught the airplane to school. Now, to build this museum, it takes a lot of things. Biggest thing it takes is money. Money, 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 money. This gentleman was his name was George Woodling Jr., and he was from Shaker Heights, and he was, his dad was a patent attorney, he was a patent attorney, but he never practiced. He was a businessman. He did a lot of work in hydraulics. Huge, huge, huge into history. And he had the money to buy things, to get what he wanted. This is him on PT-728. Unfortunately, he got sick with cancer and passed away in 2010. And he left his considerable estate to his friend Ed Patrick. And here's Ed at the same location holding that same picture of George after Ed had bought that PT boat for the museum. Groundbreaking 2011. And this is just finishing up landscaping. This is bringing in the trailer. This had been built in New Jersey, and it had spent all its life in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. So we had it restored, trucked it in, they put it onto a foundation, put a real kitchen behind it, and you can sit there and eat your breakfast or your lunch and watch the airplanes take off and land by you. And as I mentioned earlier, it's called the Tin Goose Diner. And it really adds a lot, brings a lot of people to the museum who wouldn't normally come here. This is the inside of it. And then we've added a little annex out here so we can seat about 25 more people. But it's very nostalgic. So this is the sales brochure from the Jerry O'Mahony Dining Car Company. And you bought your dining car from a catalog. How long do you want? How wide do you want? How many bun warmers do you want? And then they put it all together in the factory and then shipped it to the location. The one that the museum has was in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. At that time, I think it was called Maw Chunks, which means big bear or something in some Indian dialect. This is what it looked like in Jim Thorpe. This is the county courthouse. So the judges would call over every day and find out what the special was, for lunch. It was originally Steve's Diner, then it became the Sunrise Diner, then it became Derelict. It was in a floodplain, you couldn't bring it up to code. After 10 years of storage, Liberty bought it and was able to have a home for it, bring it up to code, and operate it. We still operate it today. Now, let's step over here. Separate organization called the Tri-Motor Heritage Foundation, and their long-term goal has been restoring a Island Airlines actual tri-motor. So they're not part of us, but we have offered them a home. This is the airplane that they got. This is the history of it. It was in Cuba in 1938, so they nicknamed it the Cuban. And it crashed in 1953, I believe. And the biggest parts would fit on a flatbed trailer. So it's basically being recreated. This is before it crashed in 1952. This is 2012, the opening day of the museum, and this is how far they had gone at that time, 2012. This is a few years later in the bigger hangar with they're recreating the wings from scratch. And then that's a couple of years ago when they put the wing center section on. And that's like a year ago. So they're probably a couple years away from flying that airplane. That airplane will probably split its time between our museum and living in a hangar at Put-in-Bay. They built a new hangar and they specified that a tri-motor had to fit in it. And we took a tri-motor over there once and it broke, and we proved that we could get the tri-motor and the snow plow in that hangar at the same time.
It was good enough for everybody.
Yeah. So this is what the airplane will look like when it's done. Now, break this way. Back to Liberty. Liberty in 2014 purchased their own flying tri-motor from a museum in McMinnville, Oregon. And so this was an already flying airplane. They had to change engines and that kind of thing. But got it home, and its original name was City of Wichita. This is what it looks like inside. Every seat's a window seat. Every seat is an aisle seat. This is Perry's Monument, Cedar Point. And then on the right side, we put City of Port Clinton. For 9 years, we had leased the airplane out to another museum who had toured it across the country. And it is now back in our full control, and we operate it during events. It'll be, excuse me, it'll be in Stowe, Kent, this weekend, selling rides. And
Port Clinton on Sunday.
okay, so it gets confusing because there's two separate tri-motors, and it gets confusing. The museum's first flying airplane is this one here, called the B-25 Mitchell bomber.
Todd, do you want me to take a turn? I can manage these pictures.
Pardon?
I can get through some of these pictures if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to give Todd's voice a break because you can see he's struggling a bit here. So it's all yours anytime you want it back. Okay, this way. Ed Patrick, a much younger Ed Patrick with Georgie's gal, fresh out of her
And this is
restoration.
sort of his tribute to his friend George.
Yeah, the name of the airplane, George Gale in George Woodling's honor. Yes, sir.
That B-17 is the model that Billy Mitchell flew off carrier decks in 1942 to bomb Tokyo. It's a medium bomber. The 4-engine is a B-17.
Yeah, that's all correct. And yes, this is a B-25 bomber that was, not this one, but the B-25 was used in the Doolittle raid on Tokyo. I'm going to ask that we keep moving because there's a lot of information here. Another shot at Georgie's Gal. Georgie's Gal has on the one side, she's got an angel. Her nickname is Angela. On the opposite side of the aircraft, she carries a different person named Helena. Notice Helena's got a forked tail and some little horns on her ears. The thinking is here that we're talking about Angela represents that flying is a heavenly experience, and then Helena here represents that combat flying is a hellish experience. Another shot of the B-25 in the air. She's a gorgeous airplane.
Loud, loud,
Quite loud.
loud, loud.
This is our Stearman PT-17. We've since renamed this plane Harold Stream in the honor of our resident Tuskegee Airman, Harold Brown. Our newest acquisition in the aircraft world is this PBY Catalina 6A. This picture was taken shortly after her arrival in 2022. We're still working on this airplane. Our goal was to get it to the Cleveland National Air Show this year, but the entire project is not something that could be rushed. We'll fly the plane when it's good and safe.
If you look at, yeah, okay, there, I'm sorry, go ahead. It answered my own question.
Of course. So, yeah, I think where we're going next is that the PBY Catalina is capable of landing both on land and water. This is a photo probably in 1986 when it flew across the Atlantic, retracing the steps of the first flying boat to cross the Atlantic. This is still her, and you notice her sponsons are down for landing. Those are the pontoon-like devices at the end of the wing. Those fold down to stabilize the aircraft as it lands in the water. This is a good friend of ours aircraft. This is a TBM Avenger. Charlie Cartledge of Wadsworth, Ohio, spent 14 years restoring this aircraft. It is a Oshkosh Golden Wrench Award winner. It is one of the finest examples of a TBM Avenger still flying.
The torpedo would go right in here.
Yeah, you can see the torpedo bay here. And also the folding wings. The folding wings, of course, made it capable to carry more of these in an aircraft carrier. The TBM Avenger was the largest of the carrier-based aircraft in World War II. There's the TBM in flight. Notice the bomb bay doors are closed. This is a TBM dropping a torpedo. That's the Mark 13 torpedo, which coincidentally is the same torpedo that our PT boats carried. Most famous TBM pilot, our President George Bush flew a TBM Avenger, christened his airplane Barbara. Okay, more pieces of the museum. Here we've got one of actually my favorite vehicle in the museum is a 1931 Chrysler. Vehicles in our museum are there because people enjoy seeing classic cars. We're also very fortunate to have many generous donors who have donated various vehicles to us. This is a 1932 replica of a highboy roadster. This was created over several years and was completed to resemble a plastic model that had acquired. And basically, the theme is aviation oriented. She sports a control wheel from a B-17 bomber and assorted aircraft accoutrements. Another donation of, actually this is John Ripich's vehicle. He was from Rocky River. Also donated this lovely 57 Chevy Bel Air convertible. Our Goodyear bus is another source of pride. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But basically, Goodyear commissioned these buses to be mobile mooring masts for the blimp. This is our 1947, which we spent about 2.5 years restoring. Here's a picture of the blimp, the bus actually tethered to the blimp. Notice the outrigger wheels that stabilized the whole operation. We had an opportunity last summer to put the blimp together with the bus, which was a real treat. The bus spent about a week at the Wingfoot Lake hangar together with the blimps. Again, we're not just airplanes, we also house this 1944 Sherman tank. This is an EZ-8. This actually belongs to the Allen County Historical Society in Lima, Ohio. They have neither the personnel nor the facility to maintain the tank, so they have it on long-term loan to us, and it is an operating piece. I should mention, next week is our military vehicle show, which happens every fall, and the Sherman and many other vehicles will be out operating, both vehicles that we own and operate, and also many exhibitors will bring in vehicles. It's a really fun weekend at the museum. Everyone loves Hogan's Heroes. I see enough gray hair for people to appreciate Hogan's Heroes. My boss, Ed, loves to acquire historical pieces. The uniforms that you see here are the original show-worn uniforms from, of course, Colonel Klink, Colonel Hogan, and of course, Sergeant Schultz. And this is an ever-expanding area of our museum. We have an extensive collection of dioramas that we were fortunate to acquire. This one represents the dry dock at Pearl Harbor on December 8th, 1941. These were built by several really master modelers. They're probably almost all about 30 years old. The two names are Bob Letterman and Louis Bruneau. They're recognized as the kings of the large-scale diorama.
That whole diorama is 12 feet long. This is the Cassins and the Downs. They were two destroyers, and they were in front of the Pennsylvania battleship, and they had all the water out to work on the Pennsylvania, and that's when the attack happened. So somebody made this diorama that is unbelievable. These pictures don't do it justice.
Incredible detail. This is the rescue or the saving of the U-505. Again, incredible detail. This one is a masterpiece. This is a diorama of a factory in Germany in World War II. If you look at this diorama up close, there are tools in the bins, there are posters on the walls. It is just absolutely incredible.
And this is the artist, Louis Bruneau, who has passed. And this is close-ups inside that model. And you'll see all those rows of cabinets there. Go to the next one, Bob.
Oh, there you go, all filled with tools. So if you're into modeling, we've got something for you out at the museum.
And we probably have, what, 30 more?
Yes.
Okay.
Very famous poster. Give us lumber for more PT boats. Are you ready to take this back?
Yeah, let me,
Okay, hydrate.
How are we doing? Good. Haven't lost anybody yet? A lot of the information that you'll see tonight came out of this book, Hunters in the Shallows, the story of the PT boat. And it really gives a history of how they were developed, not so much combat use, but how and why they were developed and how they did or did not succeed. There were, I call the PT boats, they're like pickup trucks. From 200 feet away, you can't tell if that's a Ford or a Ram or a Honda or whatever. That's the same thing with PT boats. Different companies made them. The military said they can't be longer than 80 feet, nor shorter than like 70. They have to be all wood, and you're going to use these 3 engines. So like a pickup truck, these companies had different solutions to the same problem. Here's a very famous shot, the flag in the back, and this was, I think, carbon tetrachloride that they would use to make smoke. So when they launch a torpedo, they turn around, make smoke, and just skedaddle.
Was the wood just for weight and speed?
The wood was mostly because this was not considered a high-grade armament. And they were worried about running out of aluminum. They were worried about running out of steel. The woodworkers, the yacht yards, the piano makers weren't doing anything. So they gave them a lot of work to do. We call it the PT boat, and in actuality, the type for the Navy, they call it a patrol vessel, and the class is actually motor torpedo boat, and the two-letter code is PT. So like for a battleship, they call it BB, and an aircraft carrier is CV. So PT doesn't necessarily stand for patrol torpedo. It stands for motor torpedo boat. And the squadrons were called motor torpedo boat squadrons. Why that? I mean, that's a thought that everybody thinks was patrol torpedo. They built just about 800 of them. They had 4 or 5 main companies that made them. They varied from about 70 feet, we'll forget those, from about 70 feet to about 80 feet. They were about 20 foot in beam, draft about 5 feet. So they can get into pretty shallow water. They were pretty much guaranteed, they had to guarantee 41 knots out of the box. Some more numbers here. I'm just going to flick over them real quick. And then these are the main companies that made them here in the States. Elco, Electric Boat Company, they still make submarines, nuclear submarines. Higgins was down in New Orleans. Huckins, who was sort of the loser of the whole thing, they didn't make that many, and all of their boats were used for training. And then Vosper is a whole other story that we'll get into, and that was a British design, and that ends up being what the Liberty Aviation Museum has. Elco decided that it would probably be more efficient to build them upside down. So they had fixtures. They could, so when they're working on the bottom, working on the sides, they're pushing, they're not working, leaning backwards. And then at noon, they would ring the bell, everybody would be off the floor, and they would rotate the ones who were done around, and then push them out and start on the next one. You can see the plies of wood. These were not plywood, they were actual lumber. There's a piece up here after the meeting that you can look at, and it's 2 1/2-inch pieces of oak, mahogany, 7.5 inches wide. And they would start, you can see this way, they started at the top and went all the way to the back of the boat and then turned it around, and the second layer went this way. And then they did the same thing on the bottom. The bottom layer, I believe, went this way, and then the outer layer went fore to aft, because that's where the water's going to get.
And all the companies had to follow certain regulations as to that type of wood and that like that. for Maple Lake?
Mahogany is one of the better woods known for its water resistance. This is one of the engines built by Packard in Detroit, a V12, 12 cylinders, 2,500 cubic inches. That's massive. 1,500 horsepower, and they had 3 of them. Each engine at full song, at full power, could burn 150 gallons of gas per hour. So you could go through 450 gallons of gas in an hour. This shows the 2, if I remember right, the 2 side by side are aft or forward?
It was different Higgins and Elco.
Okay. You had 2, and then the 1 was in the center. And then Elco decided that they would put a seat for a motor machinist mate over the one engine, and he had transmissions for each engine, so he could go from forward to neutral to reverse just by sitting there. I'm sure it didn't do his hearing any good. Again, I'm not going to spend much time here, but 6 3/8 inch bore, 6.5 inch stroke, just short of 2,500 cubic inches, 3,000 pounds. So it certainly was not an aircraft engine. Again, I'm not going to spend much time there. The PT boat was basically a nocturnal animal. A PT boat in the daylight with enemy aircraft was not a good position to be in. So they would tie the PT boats up to mostly islands or tenders, and they would go out about dusk and plan to be back before daylight. So there were quarters on board, and what they would do mostly is take their chow on the island. They'd have a chow hall, but it was sort of like a football team, 11, 12, 13 crewmen. They would stay together usually on the boat. You had to have all sorts of tools. You had to have the equipment to pick up the whole thing. I think it's about 80 tons, something like that.
They're all in that range.
This is an early shot with the steam-powered torpedoes being shot off the bow. The torpedoes worked very, very well on the designer's drafting board. In the real world, not so much. Later on, they moved to these, which just kicked them over the side. You got the screws running. It was a chemical reaction. It was called wet steam, and it had a turbine. And that's what turned the counter-rotating propellers. So there was not a Briggs and Stratton or a combustion engine inside of it. Let's see, basically, one of its first important things it did was rescue General MacArthur off of Corregidor. He probably should have gone off by submarine, but he waited around and was very fortunate to get out of the Philippines before they were taken over. And predictably, there was a book. They were expendable, and over-dramatized the squadron's role. Despite heavy censorship, it became a runaway bestseller. And for the rest of World War II, firmly associated PT boats with historic feats of daring do. This largely merited excessively propagandized reputation. endures to this day.
Are any of those books available now, or are they out of print?
There's some amazing thing called Amazon.
I see.
And I've got a box of them out there, put them all back. Let's see, there's really nothing here that we have to see here. They were unarmored and defensively equipped with little more than light infantry weapons. They were, in effect, nocturnal hunters, and one false move could turn them into the hunted instead. And just one more. Basically, this was the historian for the Navy. He wrote a 15-part series, The History of the Navy in World War II, and he saw how dismally low the box score was for PT boats. He labeled it useless as a torpedo boat. This guy, the author, says useless is a poor choice. They were unsuccessful as torpedo boats. As gunboats, they did fairly well, but as torpedo boats, not so much.
We used a lot of them in the Mekong, up the Mekong, as groundwater patrol craft.
Right, similar, but totally different, similar. And one more thing, for the PT boat to be successful, it had to have three things going for it: exploitable attack opportunities, reliable equipment, especially the torpedoes, and competent, experienced crews. And rarely did all three come together.
To answer your question, they were expendable, and Hunters in the Shallows are both on Amazon at about $10 a piece, so pretty attainable.
Most famous PT boat, PT-109. They made 800 of them. They weren't going to name them all. So the first one's number 1. The second one's number 2. So PT-109 was built in 1942. It went down to Panama. It was loaded on a Liberty ship, sent to Noumea, New Caledonia, south of Guadalcanal. And that's where they changed the gray paint to green, because gray in the Pacific really sticks out. So when you're hiding up against an island, that green really helped. They towed it. They were not long-range boats. They said you could operate on a PT boat about 24 hours, and then you would be so beat up, you were useless. So they towed the boat to different areas, and this destroyer towed 2 PT boats. It took them 5 days to get from one island to the next. And of course, John F. Kennedy. This is PT-109 when it's on a Liberty ship going down to Panama in 1942. There you can see PT-109, torpedo tubes, mufflers for the engines.
Notice the dirty water line on it. So the boat had been tested and had been run some, but nobody washed it.
Yeah. Allegedly, these were mounted on Liberty ships with the capability of floating off, so that if the ship was sunk, allegedly these would stay afloat. I wouldn't bet my bottom dollar on that. The first commander was Bryant Larson, and he was followed by Roland Westholm, and then John F. Kennedy took over for him. I want to bring a local person into play here. And this was a gentleman by the name of Ensign Leonard J. Tom. He was born and raised in Sandusky, Ohio. He was a very good football player. He ended up as an All-American at Ohio State. He volunteered for the Navy, volunteered for PT boats, and he was the second in command to John F. Kennedy. This is him on a football team. He was a big, big lineman. And this is the actual deck log from, what is that, April 25th, 1943. And at 1100 hours, Lieutenant Junior Grade J.W. Kennedy assumed command of boat. So these are actual documents that still exist. JFK, of course, medically, he should never have been in the military. He should never have. In fact, he didn't pass his Army physical. And so he pulled some strings, got in the Navy. But he didn't run away from it either. And then this is the two of them, Kennedy and Leonard Tom here. And there's the whole crew together, 109. There was a Japanese, we were trying to take a hold of Guadalcanal. Australia's down here, I think New Zealand's over here somewhere. And we were trying to build an airport. We did build an airport on Guadalcanal. And the Japanese that were based way up here didn't want that to happen. So they invaded, so their forces were over here, we were down here. And at the nighttime, they bring their destroyers to here, and right about dusk, they would take off and go as fast as they could down what was called the slot. They would get down here and turn around, and all these supplies were in 55-gallon barrels. They would not stop. They would just do a 180, throw the barrels off, and rocket back home to get there before daylight. Kennedy, with a bunch of other boats, they were stationed, let's see, B. They were stationed right here off of this island. And they also had PT boats here and destroyers up here because the Japanese would come rocketing down here. And while they were doing that, in fact, here's some paperwork, John F. Kennedy, his boat was called Oak 14. So that was his call sign for the night. Again, I'm not going to read this, but basically, it was such a dark night. His boat did not have radar. They were blind. And a Japanese destroyer came by at about probably 30 plus knots. And it basically broke 109 in half, basically. Some of the other boats were close. They maneuvered to get out of the way. They saw the explosion. They saw it burn for a while. They didn't think there were any survivors. The survivors did swim to Plum Pudding Island, and then JFK, a few days at night, would swim out to Blackett Strait, hoping that he would intercept some of our PT boats that were working out there to let him know. That didn't work, so they swam, floated to this island, and ended up getting in touch with a coast watcher, and then ended up being rescued about a week later. Lenny Tom was given his own boat. They named it the Thomcat, T-H-O-M Cat. Let's see, it was a 77-footer Elco, He was a key player in the drama that followed PT-109 sinking. Like many others who came into JFK's life, Lenny Tom has become but a footnote in the history books. He deserves so much more. Even if he had never met Jack Kennedy, his life would have been worth remembering. He got home after the war, and in 1946, was in a car with some people, and he was taking somebody home or something, and in Ravenna, they crossed the railroad tracks, and they got T-boned by a train. So he survives the war to be killed in a train wreck. John F. Kennedy was running for Congress. He left Massachusetts to come and be in the funeral. Paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. Here's the paperwork you had to fill out to get a headstone. And that is the headstone in Youngstown. Okay, this is Leonard Tom's sister. I believe she's passed. And she gave us a whole bunch of things that were her brothers. Surviving, there's one in the water right now, and that's not ours. That's one out in, I think, Washington State. There may never be more than two. Vosper. So this is a British company, but they're building them here in America at Annapolis, Maryland. They're a little bit different. The war's over. We don't know what to do with these things. They're brand new, 71 feet long. They even come with a sextant and binoculars and a compass, and we'll sacrifice for $10,000.
A la carte.
What is beam?
Beam is width.
Oh, okay.
Width.
Thank you.
Beam is width. Well, I'm going to go through these real fast. Do we have the plans to rebuild it? This is about all we've got. You know, it doesn't show pieces, it doesn't show much. But this is for 723, and we have both 724 and 728. So our boat builder has taken this and used the best practices for wooden boats to basically rebuild the PT boat. I'm going to step over here now. This is PT boat number 2, or maybe number 1. Separate boat. This is PT-724. 4 frames before the one that we're restoring. This lived in Sandusky for, I think, about 30 years. The owner lived on it for about 11. They had turned it into a cabin cruiser. And he looked at it, and he did donate it to us. And then I think we bought the other one because we thought it was closer to completion. This was a private yacht called the Endeavor II, and in 1958, I think, it cruised from Maine to Venezuela and returned. That's a heck of a 3-hour cruise. So that basically sits in our parking lot, rotting as we speak. I doubt anything's going to come of it. You want to take?
Sure. Okay, the vessel that you see here is PT-728, and 728 found its way, again, all of these were sold as war surplus. The Vosper boats were intended to be shipped to Russia as part of the Lend-Lease program. The war ended before these 2 vessels were shipped, along with several others, and again, they were sold off as war surplus. 728 found its way south. It was in Key West, Florida, somewhere around 1960. And if we know about 1960, that's the year John Kennedy gets elected president. John Kennedy campaigned heavily on the PT-109 story. So somebody took PT-728 and said, let's modify it and let's make it look, and let's make it look like PT-109, and we're going to sell rides on it. So it operated in Key West for I think close to 10 years. And then the interest in PT boats kind of dried up there, and the boat found its way north to New Jersey, and there were several restaurants there that operated PT boats as sort of a novelty item. And here you can see PT-728 dressed as PT-109 with a whole load of passengers on it off of the New Jersey coastline. Okay, so fast forward a few years. Eventually, PT-728 finds itself belonging to a gentleman who's buying every PT boat that he can get his hands on. His dream is to restore an 80-foot Elco. Most people think the 80-foot Elco is the sleekest looking PT boat. Anyways, he's got PT-728. He does some touring with it and does enough work on it so that he can show it off a little bit, and eventually decides to offer it for sale so that he can focus his efforts on his dream of restoring an Elco. The Elco that he dreamt of restoring still sitting there since 2012. PT-728, on the other hand, was purchased by the Liberty Aviation Museum, and we brought it to Port Clinton, Ohio. The picture that you see here is PT-728 at one of the locks in the Erie Canal. Our route took us north on the Hudson River and then west on the Erie Canal. I think there's probably 30-some locks that we had to pass through, and this is one of the locks. Concession to comfort, it was the middle of summer, it was really hot. The 10x10 canopy on the back, it was just so that we didn't cook our heads off. So we had no idea that we would become celebrities. As we came through the locks, every lock had more people looking down on us because they wanted to see the PT boat.
They would email ahead to their friends in the next block. You've got to see this. I think somebody brought you dinner.
Oh yeah, it was every town then wanted to outdo the town before, because it took us about 3 or 4 days to transit the Erie Canal. So yeah, towards the end, there was food being delivered right down to the dock. We couldn't tie up the boat fast enough, and here we are, just grubby guys trying to get this boat home. The boat smelled. It was hot, and all of a sudden we're entertainers. This is PT-728 once she found her way into a building for restoration. I should say that once we got the boat home and really had a chance to go through it, we found out just how needy she was. And it's never been the approach of our museum to do anything halfway. And our boss said, send this thing out, let's get professionals on it, and let's have them restore this boat for us. So, fast forward, after a lengthy and painful story, we ended up seizing the boat through legal action, and then we found out that the work done by the so-called professionals wasn't very professional at all. So in 2016, we end up with the boat in our museum, and we're tearing apart everything that got done previously. Actually, I think this is 728 being torn apart the first time.
Because this is the
This is the ugly and painful story, and this isn't my favorite part.
No.
Okay, so
Okay, here you can start to see the different layers of planking.
bear in mind, all the work that you're seeing here, we eventually tore apart.
Did you hire a shipwright?
We did, supposedly.
Boat right here.
Okay, let me back up one step. These are the nests with the twin 50 caliber guns that were created by us from a restorer in Massachusetts. These were restored with a handful of original parts, and then all the other parts were painstakingly created to mimic what those twin 50s look like. These are set up so they could fire a propane charge. That's the kid in our boss. You want to make sure that you can go pop, 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 pop when we're out in the water. Again, pictures of Lenny Tom that you saw already. And who is this family?
This is Leonard Tom's son, Lenny Jr. He was a lawyer and attorney in Alaska, and he came down one summer with, I think, daughter and granddaughter, and saw the boat that we had commemorated to his father. So this is Leonard Tom Jr. And these are some of the cousins from Lenny Tom's brothers and sisters.
So this is an inside shot of the boat, and you can see everything's looking all white and pretty, and nobody at this point is aware just what lurks below the fresh, nice white paint. There is a picture of the boat this is in Port Clinton, and she was in the water for about 6 weeks.
2016.
16.
What was top speed you had it to?
It was up over 50 miles an hour, and there was throttle left, but the boat didn't behave properly either.
Can I ask what that means?
Why it didn't behave properly? It had a tendency to pull hard to one side and not turn very well to the. It would turn to starboard or to the right effortlessly, which could make it turn to port almost no matter what you did.
The engines
It's out of rig.
Okay, the question about the engines. The vessel was repowered with 1,540 horsepower man diesels. Why diesels? We talked about fuel consumption with the Packard engines. The Packard engines also difficult to maintain, also difficult to get parts for, and it's our desire to offer rides on this boat. So with a fuel consumption of 400 gallons an hour, we can't do rides on that. We're going to have to charge people thousands of dollars to go out for a half hour.
But on the return trip down the Erie Canal, they still had, what, 200-300 horsepower or something like that?
During the 1960 conversion, the Packard engines were removed, and there were a set of 871 Detroit diesels in the boat when we got it. They were 871 turbos. They made about 500 horsepower apiece. Boat had a top speed of about 17 knots. Okay, we're looking at a reproduction.
Where are you storing that much gas?
There are enormous fuel tanks,
3,000 gallons.
3,000 gallons. And
In a wooden boat with no armament.
they did have a layer of rubber about an inch thick, which was the armor to protect the fuel tanks. Right here we see a reproduction of a Mark 13 torpedo. These torpedoes were created by a volunteer at the Liberty Aviation Museum who had skill in fiberglass molding. The World War II Museum in New Orleans got a look at our torpedoes and they said, we've restored a PT boat, can you make us a set of torpedoes? So the PT boat at the National World War II Museum carries a set of Liberty Aviation Museum created torpedoes. We're very proud of that. Again, more pictures of the deck. This is the control station, and the control station, if you remember the picture of Jack Kennedy at the wheel of the boat, the control station looked very much like this. But here's the secret. This whole panel with the two handles on it can be lifted up, and the modern controls are below it. I have a picture of that. I'll show you that later. This is looking down the companionway or the stairway down into the boat. This is looking forward. This is looking aft. The large red bottle is the fire suppression system galley on the left. And the room that we're looking into behind the stairwell is the day room or chart room. The galley.
This is originally how the engines were laid out, two and then one forward or rearward by itself, and then go to the next one. Now, these don't turn out very well, but these are two 2013 MAN, it's a German company, the word's about this long, man diesels?
Kind of a fun fact. Why man diesels? Why German diesels in your American PT boat? The answer was packaging. None of the domestic manufacturers had the power output and the physical dimensions that would fit in the boat. So German diesels it was. And in keeping with a true multinational experience, I am a registered captain, and I'm the captain of record for PT-728. Fujita is very much a Japanese name.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Fuel tanks, where were they located? And how
Just
many?
forward, just forward of the engines. It was a whole compartment, basically one on the port, one on the starboard, with a small trailway in between. They were about 1,500 gallons apiece.
So yeah, it's a tremendous amount of weight. So when PT-728 was reworked, our version, because we're using diesels and our fuel consumption is a fraction of what the originals were, we spec'd 600 gallon fuel capacity. So at 60 gallons an hour, which is our full throttle burn rate, we've got probably 10 hours of running on the boat, which is ample for what we're going to do. More pictures of 728 at rest.
Yeah, okay, this was speed runs.
Yeah, this is I can't tell exactly how fast the boat is moving here. What I can tell you is that her attitude was never correct. That nose at higher speeds, that nose should be lifting from the water. This boat is very much in displacement mode. It's shedding water aside instead of climbing on top of it. Part of the reason we had handling issues, and then when we got into the rebuild of the boat, we learned a lot about why the boat's attitude wasn't correct. Here she's starting to climb up on plane, but it never broke clean. This is probably about as fast as we ran the boat. Let's see. Oh, this is in Port Clinton, on Portage River.
How do you move
How do you haul the PT
a
boat?
72-foot boat? Well, it's like moving an apartment building.
The largest boat hauling trailer in our area comes up about 25 feet short for hauling PT-728. You can see how low the shafts are to the ground, so it's a pretty tedious move.
Would that have 2 engines in that?
Yes, we have 2 diesels.
Do they still go clockwise?
They are counter-rotating, so one prop
Not on
rotates.
the original ones, or?
I believe the originals all rotated the same direction. That was so that they didn't have to stock different props. All the parts interchanged better that way.
Made them tough to dock.
Made it tough to dock, absolutely. This is squeaking the boat into our what we call our boathouse, or the building that was built beside our airplane hangar at the museum. This is where the boat still sits today. Disassembly work has begun, and
Exploratory surgery.
and I don't know exactly when this happened, but at some point, we hired a new boatwright, and we said, fine, if we can't have this restored properly, we'll do it ourselves. And we hired a gentleman who's basically spent his whole life in wooden boat building. And his recommendation after he got into it was, if you want to do this right, you need to start over. And we can patch the thing every couple of years and try and stay ahead of it. But if you want to do it right, you need to start over. Well, to my boss's credit, he says, I'm not building a boat to be patched together every few years. I'm building a boat that I want to be here long after we're gone. He says, the original lasted some 70, 80 years. He says, there's no reason this boat shouldn't live that long. So start over we did. And this picture is probably 4 or 5 years old.
At least.
So all the way down, and all these frames, these vertical members that you see here, those have all been replaced by now. In this picture, the brand new stem is in place. Can you point out the stem? Oh, I guess I got that.
Yeah.
So the stem is the
Yeah,
only.
back up.
Whoops.
Oops. I can back it up here. Come on. Okay, this is the stem here, the bow stem. We found it was rotted and broken. So we had to take, I think it was 4 pieces of oak, 3-inch thick, and make a big mold and steam each board individually. And then clamp it in there, let it sit a week, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then laminate them all together.
You were really lucky. Most of the parts on the boat don't require steam bending. That big stem is the only part that we had to go through that very tedious process on.
Did you ever try any?
Was that the reason why it was handled right?
Did you try to put any composite materials on it, or did it go by the original?
Not really. We've looked into it like epoxy. The Coast Guard said, my suggestion, resorcinol is a glue that's been around forever. Their suggestion was epoxy used above the water so you can see if it deteriorates. We have not and do not intend to gel coat this. The first time it was gel coated, like a fiberglass, if you will, like a body putty.
So in the misguided rebuild of the boat, they covered the planking with a layer of fiberglass cloth and then coated that with epoxy. That goes against most people. Most people will tell you that you're not building a boat that's going to last.
Because the water's always going to get in. Now it can't get out.
You create a rot factory with that approach, so we're not doing that. Now, as far as the use of epoxies definitely have their uses, and this is a core sample of an engine stringer, and that I've got pictures of this later on, but our engine stringers are made of 2 layers of solid material with 2 pieces of plywood sandwiched in between. This is a Hydrotech marine grade plywood. It's the best plywood that you can buy. This is similar to the original construction. Resorcinol glue used at that time, now epoxy because it's a superior adhesive. So this is a reasonable use of epoxy in boat building as opposed to resorcinol, which eventually dries out. I'm a wooden boat guy myself. I have several Lyman boats, and one of the things that happens on some of the old Lymans is eventually the resorcinol scarf joints start to come loose, and I've had that happen on several of mine. So epoxy is how you go nowadays.
This is in the very stern of the boat. This is called the lazarette. Why, what that means, I'm not sure. This is a steering gear. Come on, man. The steering gear for the rudders. And you can see this is an original piece of wood. Instead of a data plate, like your car has a data plate by the windshield, they took a router and they routed PT-728, and I think it was August 8th or something, 1945. We know that's an original piece of wood. Okay, let's get to your newer ones.
Okay, so we're getting there. Sir, you had a question.
Yes, when you're reconstructing the boat, are you fixing the handling problem?
Absolutely.
Was the beam, whatever that?
The stem was in poor condition, but didn't cause the handling issues. What we found when we got into the boat and really started measuring, we found out that the boat was 2 or 3 inches larger on one side than the other. And, patches over the years, the errors start to multiply. Also, there was about a 4-inch hog in the bottom. The keel of the boat is supposed to be almost dead straight. and we found out that there was about 4 inches of curvature in the hull, and that would have definitely created the problem, the nose down attitude, and it would also make the boat very darty from side to side. If you take a small boat, a small planing boat, and you overload the nose of it and run at high speed, you're going to have a hard time steering the boat, and that's kind of what was causing our problems. So we don't expect any more problems of that nature.
These are your new ones, Bob.
Okay, great. So I went through a lot of the pictures that we've been taking recently, and what you see here is the construction of an engine stringer, and okay, so the engine stringers in the boat, there are 4 of them, 2 outboard, 2 inboard, and they are about 24 feet long. But you can't buy 24-foot long pieces of wood.
Mahogany.
So in this case, this is the plywood cores, and we are scarfing or putting a taper on the end of the board so that they can be joined together with epoxy. And I'll advance here, you should see a picture of that. So there's Ron, he's operating a router to put that taper on there. The taper is 4 times the thickness of the wood. There's a better picture of the scarf further back in here, and I'll show you that. Let's fast forward, and we'll assume we've scarfed our plywood together in 24-foot lengths. Now we are sandwiching on the outer cores of the mahogany. That's what you see on the outside pieces here and here of the sample. So to hold everything together while the epoxy cures, we've got this series of custom-made clamps. These are all resting on a large steel I-beam to keep the whole assembly straight as everything cures. Again, you can see how we're compressing that. You can see the I-beam in the bottom of this picture.
You can see the diagonals. Can you back up just a second?
Sure.
The diagonals. They did the same thing. They made a ski ramp, if you will, 2 boards together at that angle and put a router, and they would route in an inch so that those pieces, those diagonals, would sit flush to the boat. So when you put the skin on it, the skin has more surface area to be attached to.
Yeah, you'll also notice those frames are in red lead on the boat itself. Everything that you see in red lead has been replaced. So in that earlier picture where we saw the boat stripped of its planking, everything was white. These are all new frames that have been constructed. And those frames are constructed out of solid mahogany, like that piece right there. Yeah, we managed to we managed to strike a deal with an importer who was excited about our project, and he was able to guarantee us pricing on all the lumber for the boat some years ago, and he's honored that ever since. I can't imagine he's making much money on this project, but it's just one of the people that have really been helpful to us.
Mahogany originally, World War II, was Honduras, I believe, and the United States bought about every board foot. And now it's, I think, illegal to export mahogany from Honduras. This is a little bit different breed that grows in Africa. And it doesn't have the characteristics of mahogany that they use for furniture. So it doesn't have a huge price tag attached to it.
The bunks of lumber that we get in come in marked product of the Congo. So it's a rainforest wood, and when we talk about destruction of the rainforest, we hope the rainforest can survive the construction of one more PT boat. So,
They're currently at war.
which I'll show you some more pictures in a little while. We bought a whole lot of, almost all the planking we have on hand, so that we wouldn't get caught up. When they started talking about tariffs and things like that, we thought we'd better buy out. Plus, this deal with the importer has been going so long, we thought we'd better grab the material while we can. And by the way, when we bring in material, the importer gives us a list of what each bunk of lumber contains. How long are the pieces, how wide are the pieces? So our boat builder goes through and he says, okay, send me bunk J, bunk Q, and bunk X, because those are the ones that will produce the parts we need with the least waste. So depending on where we are in the process, we're able to select the bunks of lumber that are closest to what we need. This is an engine stringer completed and ready for installation. Again, it's about 24 feet long. The triangular openings, that's actually what this is from, is cutting those openings out. Those openings are there for ventilation. It'll also lighten that stringer a little bit and also provide access so that we can, if there's something behind it, we can access them. Okay, here we're connecting a forklift to the stringer. It's laying on the big steel I-beam. There it is, suspended from the forklift, and you can see there's a little bit of snow on the ground. This was in January, I think.
I'm surprised that forklift.
I wouldn't have wanted to sit on the long end of that stringer.
And then you had to put it in long ways from a little hole.
Yeah, what we see here, this is the transom or the back of the boat, and we've got a large hole cut in it so that this can slide out through the bulkheads, and that's the front of the engine room right there. So that's 24 feet of length right here to here. This is our crew that was there the day we put that in. Our boat builder on the left in the striped shirt, he's very fashion conscious. And then Ron on the right is one of our longest standing volunteers. I think he's been with the project since 2016. The other two gentlemen are relatively new, probably less than 3 years on the project. There they are again, very proud of what they accomplished that day. You can see on the left there the steel I-beam that we used as a building block, if you will, to keep that part straight. The boat itself is sitting on a series of steel I-beams, again for the same purpose, to keep that keel dead straight. There is a rack full of planking that will eventually go on the hull of the boat. There's 2 or 3 of those racks.
Why don't you back it up a couple? So those planks, whoops,
Sorry.
forward one. Everybody
Yeah.
stop.
Okay.
Those long planks will go 90 degrees to those diagonals. And they'll be right next to each other, and they'll go all the way to the bow.
To say this way.
It's 45.
So there'll be 90
Be
degrees
90
to
off
those
of these.
on that. Then the second layer of skin will go the same way as those diagonals are going. So it's not plywood, it's lumber.
So you can safely say this is going to be better than it was originally.
At every turn, we're trying to build better.
An automotive term is resto mod. You know, I have a 57 Chevy, but it's got a new GM engine, power steering, power brakes. That's this one.
What's that word?
Resto mod. Restoration modification.
Okay, what we see here, this temporary structure, we're looking down from the deck into the engine room. This little rectangular box, that represents the oil pan or the lowest parts of the new manned diesels. That's critical because, again, dimensions and packaging is super critical. These frames in this area have to be cut down so that the engine can sit low enough to be positioned properly fore and aft or front to back. We'll show you some more pictures of what we had to do to make that work.
The depth of the oil pan, it doesn't, underneath, the oil pan can be various shapes.
They're in the hull.
I know, but yeah. I mean, if you don't have that measured right.
Right.
But yeah, you can only lower it so far, and then you're in the bottom of the boat. And that's exactly what we're trying to be careful not to happen. Is that these frames are cut down so that we've got enough room.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This boat that you're completing now, what's it weigh compared to the original boats, PT boats? There's a lot of them.
Should be lighter.
It'll definitely be lighter. We anticipate a completed weight of about 59,000 pounds.
Yeah, it'll probably be 2/3.
Okay, we're gonna step this up a little bit. This is the area that we're engineering for the mounting of the struts that would support the rear end of the propellers. This is a box that replicates the size of the stuffing box, which is where the shafts penetrate the hull. And there is what's called the shaft log that carries the drive shaft. Again, there's an example of a scarf. You can see how that wood has been tapered down to a feather edge. Okay, right here, you've got a stainless steel fixture that's been created to reinforce the frame where we had to cut them down underneath the engine. So those will be sort of a hybrid construction. Interior shots. Here, the guy that's working that says crew, he's removed a bulkhead that's being replaced right now. Looking down at the engine stringer, and you see the back end of the one engine mount. Again, looking down where the engines will eventually rest.
The engines will sit on, each engine will be on 2 wooden beams, not steel, but wood.
Here you can see aluminum conduit. We're starting to prepare for the installation of electrical service for the boat. That is our mock-up of a fuel tank. And notice diesel fuel only. But again, we're playing around with these sizes to figure out exactly how to build all the supporting structure to hold those tanks. Okay, we saw the control station on PT-109. We saw another picture of that. So we lift this cover up, and there's our modern controls. Once again, Ron making scarves, and I think we've gone all the way around.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yep, we're all the way around. I think we're open to questions right now.
We only have time for a question or two, so.
Okay.
If all goes well, when do you
There's the
expect to finish?
skin of the bottom.
And then what percentage of the boat will be original?
A very small percentage of the boat will be original. There is no motivation to save an 80-year-old keel that you're going to have to tear up an awful lot of what we did to rebuild the boat and make it safe. You know, you're going to have to tear up 2/3 of what you did now to get back to it. So there's a piece of the original keel there, and you can see it was time.
Call it this a restoration?
You can call it a restoration, you can call it a rebuilding, you can call it whatever you like. But we're going to have a PT boat that people can come out and take a ride on. We take some criticism for that. Yes, sir.
Just an observation, somebody asked about does the library have any books on PT boats, so I checked the online card catalog. There's about a dozen allegedly available out there. And I can assure you, if you come to the book sale in October, those books are because I've seen them.
Fantastic. Anybody else? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I'd like to thank you guys for coming out tonight. It's very rare that we have an opportunity to see what goes into rebuilding / restoring something that comes from World War II. But thank you, Bob. Thank you, Todd, for coming out.
Well, thank you very much for having us, and all this good stuff is available for you to come out and see in Portland, Ohio, just about an hour away from here. So look us up on Facebook, look us up on the internet, but do come see us, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.